Welcome back to the Writing Biz. We are looking completely outside the publishing industry today because the music business mastered the art of slicing, dicing, and licensing intellectual property decades before the first Kindle store opened. If you want to know how to turn your words into a recurring revenue engine, you learn from a world-class music publisher. My guest today is Greig Watts, a UK-based songwriter, producer, and publisher with DWB, where he specializes in lyrics, melody, and managing a publishing department that mentors numerous writers. A recognized expert in the Asian and Eurovision music markets, he has hosted successful songwriting camps, overseen 18 Eurovision entries, and served as a music consultant for the BBC. Beyond his production career, he is an author who released the Amazon best-selling Keeping the Dream Alive and is currently writing a second book detailing his Eurovision journey. Greig, welcome to the Writing Biz. Thank you so much for taking time to talk with me today.
Thank you for having me. It's really good to be here.
As I mentioned before, this isn't actually in the lane of the Writing Biz, but I do think that because of the music industry's ability to stay relative with the type of content that they produce, I think that it will be helpful to us.
Yeah.
So many writers struggle with the split identity of being the artist who creates the work and the entrepreneur who monetizes it. How did you make that shift psychologically and operationally from Greig the creator to Greig the manager of an IP empire?
I actually think I was born that way, unfortunately. So it's maybe not the answer, but I think actually, so when I was early 80s, I was growing up, I loved music and I got into songwriting, but also I was running my own little businesses, right? I was getting car washing with my friends. And actually I was never doing the job. I was getting them to do the job and I was running the accounts side. So I remember my sort of careers advice where they asked me, well, what do I want to do when I leave school? And it was like, I want to be a businessman and a songwriter or a singer. And they definitely said, no, do something else. That's not a real job. And I kept repeating it. And eventually I said, well, the truth is I was already a businessman. I was selling records in the playground and I was already writing my own songs. So I think I already knew, I was just born with a business mind and a creative mind, which was important. And it's very different because I did come into the music industry and write songs with people. And there were so many people who didn't have the business side. They were just creative. This is probably why I've ended up in publishing and things like that, because I was able to help a lot of creative people think of themselves as a business owner. I really think the key is you have to believe you're a CEO of your own company. Your artistry, you are the CEO of your own company. You are. That's the truth. It's not you're an artist and you're a business owner. You are the CEO of your own company. I'm the CEO of Greig Watts, and the artists out there and the writers out there, the CEO of their own company, because this is what's going to keep you going, monetizing what you do.
It's exactly the same in the writing business. So many writers are done writing their book and then they have no idea what to do because they haven't they have not formulated a plan because they haven't started to think of themselves as a business. So that's one reason that the podcast exists, is because of that.
Yeah.
So it can be a difficult transition. And I'm sure in your mentoring that you see this a lot with the creators that you work with.
Yeah. Creators are very creative. They love creating. My business partner, Pete, when we first met, he would say, I've written 16 songs today. And I would say, oh, that's amazing. Let's hear the songs. And really what he meant is he'd written 16 ideas. So he was a genius at creating, but I had to go, well, we can't just have 16 ideas. We have to think, how do we sell the ideas? Oh, we can't sell ideas. We have to finish songs. So I trained him into becoming a finishing of his songs, finishing the productions. And as he finished, he became a very successful songwriter because of that, because he went from just creator to actually making it a business too. So you have to have a finished product.
That's a very key part of understanding how to actually monetize and build your business. Let me ask you, as writers start partnering on joint venture projects, spinoffs, or multimedia adaptations of their work, what foundational legal and operational boundaries should they establish to protect their relationships and their wallets? So that seems to be another piece that we don't talk about very often, is contracting, how to protect their IP and not end up into a situation where they get in some trouble. So can we talk
Yeah.
about that? Can you give me some examples maybe?
I guess with songwriting, the first thing we do is obviously we can sit down and write a song on our own. And if you're going to copyright that or make sure it's your, in the old days, I used to send the CD or tape to myself in a self-addressed envelope and never open it. I got sacks of them up at the house. Don't think that means anything now. I think now the computer will stamp date it and things like that. So you just got to make sure you got those records. But I think the most important thing is when you're collaborating, which I do most of the days, and I'm actually putting writers together with each other, the first thing is to agree there's 3 people in the room. So actually 3 people write the song and own the song in a third. We don't say, well, you did this and you did that. It's like we're all there together. Let's establish that there's a rule, that it's an equal split between each writers. And then again, you have this timestamp on the computer, how you're recording the songs. And from that point, as again, you need to finish the song. So I think it's make agreements very early on. We never write with someone new without saying, this is how we work. Is that okay? The only times we've ever got into trouble, which I reckon there's been 3 times in my 25-year career, is when I missed the "this is how we work" email, just because of being busy, and then someone came in, assumed something different, and went out and said, oh, but there was 3 of you and only 1 of me, so I thought that was 50-50, between 50 with them and 50 between the 3 or something. What ended up happening because of that is you end up not working together as much because it doesn't feel as teamy in that sense. So it can, by not actually establishing the rules at the beginning, you can actually lose the creativity, which is really important. If you lose creativity, you end up not working on together very much. So I think it's really important to establish the actual agreement before you start the work.
That could be a very difficult position to be in, because it would affect, not, like you said, not just that project, but future projects too.
Yeah.
It leaves a bad taste in everybody's mouth, honestly.
Yeah, totally.
Especially if it becomes a heated discussion.
Yeah. But say we don't have it because we establish what it is beforehand. The only times we have had that, and it goes on and it just makes you not want to work with the people anymore. And it might not be they've done anything wrong. It's just we all assume something when we enter a room. So there's an element of, by establishing it beforehand, we've all agreed. And if someone says something different, then we can choose to work with them or not. But we've at least established it and had the discussion. This is why really lots of songwriters do need managers or publishers, because a manager or a publisher will ask the difficult question, a songwriter might not.
Right, because they know what to ask.
Yeah, and also be creative. I want to be creative. So often when I publish a writer now, they say one of the things, what does a publisher do? And obviously we collect income for them, we pitch their songs. But one of the things we should become is a barrier. And that's a barrier between them and the other writer. And that sounds wrong, as in we don't want to get in the way. But if they can pass the business discussion to us, it can help them stay creative. So if we become that barrier and ask what's the more difficult business questions, they can stay creative and they don't even have to get involved on that side.
It's interesting. So let me ask you a question. I know that you do a lot of international work, and with writers, there's a lot of issues with like foreign translation rights and international licensing, marketing to other countries. What the literary world learn from the music industry's playbooks, how you all work within that frame of producing an international product?
I guess maybe the songwriting world is more collaborative. You can write a song alone, but you need more people to it seems like these days 2, 3, 4 is more usual. So maybe writing a book, many people don't sit down and write a book together. Maybe if you think about all the things to finish a book, you do need a book writer, you need an editor, you need a person who does the photos. I know that when I did mine, I did the writing, but the actual pushing it out and putting it in a format and all that sort of stuff was really important. So I think it's learning to be more collaborative is actually one of the ways. So I've always learned about the culture of the people that we're working with as being a very important. I think that's been a very important way to work. So we've done a lot of work in Japan, for instance. And when I first worked in Japan, the person who was in Japan guiding me said, don't negotiate on the contracts, which seemed very strange because in England, we're used to someone offers us a contract, it's not the best contract and we negotiate up. But in Japan, there's a code of honor and they'll offer you an honorable contract. So if you negotiate too hard, you end up kind of offending the honor. Now, if we didn't have someone in the country helping us with that, we would never know. I've worked in Japan for 20 years because someone has been guiding me. So there's an element of really learning the culture of each place that you work in and not expecting them to abide by our rules. We learn this is how it works in Japan. This is how it works in France. This is how it works in the States. And actually, all of the collection societies are very different around the world. I learned that very early on when I was doing my first publishing sale, and I was working with a UK writer and publisher, working with a Belgian publisher, and I made the mistake of reading the American how to publish book, and it was very different, very different. So but I soon learned read the right book, learn the right language, and the people on the other side know how to deal with you in a sense. So
It's very interesting. I think that's something that definitely you would have to keep in mind because communicating properly across the different cultures can be difficult.
there's some certain signs that we might use in English that might be rude in another language, and we don't know that. There was a kind of famous advert we had here that sort of showed it. It was like, wow, if I did that in South America, I could be really offending someone. So you have to learn the cultures of the business world as well. But that's part of what we said at the beginning. This is not just your songwriting. It's not just your songs you're representing. You as a CEO, this is your brand. So you've got to think about that everywhere you work.
Wow, that's got to get complicated for you. In the beginning, it must have been quite a struggle to figure out the pieces. You're very lucky to have somebody like in Japan to help you.
Yeah, it was. I've come from a background where I really believe in team and family. I know that I can't do this all on my own. So having help by someone in each country is a really important way to do it. I remember the PRS, so the Performing Rights Society, when I first joined, they had a section which said they're going to collect my income from the UK. They can collect it in different countries, but it almost said, well, we don't go and get it, but we just receive it. So it might be better if you work with people in that country. And at that point, I thought, that's an interesting, it's almost like a coded message. Go make sure you connect with someone in those countries as well, because it's just simple. Let's say, use Japan again. I'm negotiating a Japanese contract and I try and fill in a Japanese form. I can't do it because I can't speak Japanese. It's very simple. You need help from someone in that country to help speak the language or the culture. AI copyright laws are different in every country. So there's an element, and they're changing all the time. So it's very similar to copyright law being different in each country for songs.
In an article recently that was specifically about AI in different countries and how in a lot of other countries it's so more widely accepted than it is in the United States. There's not as much of a struggle with the AI. Do you find that to be true, or?
For songwriting, we're in this sort of ambiguous stage. We have been for about a year, where actually you can use there's an AI product called Suno where you can use it, and it really helps you make what I'd call a demo. So we could just do a basic recording and then put it into AI, and it doesn't change the song, it just makes a production, and then that means we can say, oh, it's a good song or not. We've still written the song. But a lot of people are using it in a different way where they're just saying, can you write a song for me? So we're in this ambiguous sort of area of how much we should let new technology affect what we do. If you think about it, so I'm a big 80s music fan. Back in 1982, 83, Howard Jones, Herbie Hancock, Thomas Dolby, they were all banned from the Grammys for using synthesizers. A few years later, they won Grammys. So technology, I think if you use the technology to help enhance what you do, that's fine. But I think there's a fine line if you're saying, please create for me.
You can use the tools to make you more efficient, not to actually do the creating for you.
Exactly. And so the difference between my first and second book, the first book I wrote solely on my own. I edited it all on my own. I did have an editor at the end who edited that, came in and made my grammar much better. But the second book, I kind of am writing all on my own, but I'm also asking ChatGPT, can you just clean that up a little bit? And that does help me get it into a better structure, so someone at the end doesn't have to basically take out all my apostrophes and things like that. But I'm not asking it write my book for me. I have all the stories, I have all the content, but it's almost like help me build the framework and foundation a little bit because I can present it better.
I had a conversation with a friend of mine that's a publisher yesterday, and I had an issue. I built his website, and I had an issue with the website. He's like, why don't you just go to Claude and ask them about it? Which, of course, was the right answer, and it worked, and I was able to fix it. But he said, and I totally agree with this, a lot of the people that he works with in his industry are very anti-AI for any reason. And he said they're shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
Because if you do not take the time to learn those tools and learn how to apply them to your business to make it more efficient, then you're going to be left behind. It's like saying that I am not going to learn how to use a computer back when they became a thing.
Yeah.
You were left behind.
Yeah.
And it was a struggle thereafter. I mean, some people still to this day don't know how to email.
Yeah.
Which it blows my mind. But you have to pay attention to these trends. And when they impact like this, when cell phones became a thing, particularly the smartphones, where would we be if we had said, I'm not going to bother to use that? We use them for everything now. They're just like a really high-powered computer in your hand.
Literally everything.
It's the same thing with AI.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to come to the point where we're not going to know how to do what we're doing without its input.
Yeah.
And for some people, that's a problem, but it is going to make our work workable.
It speeds up the process. I've done lots of podcasts, and I remember thinking, this person asked me the same questions as the previous person. And I worked out that they'd obviously put my book or the back of my book into ChatGPT and come up with these same set of questions. So I think you have to be really careful not to just cut and paste. Use it with your input.
Absolutely.
But actually then, and also you see on social media, there's this post and it's like ChatGPT will always have 3 lines, 1, 2, 3 at the end. And there's another 3 lines, like it's summing up. You almost have to, if you're going to ask it to generate content for you, you have to move the content around afterwards to make it not look like AI as well. Otherwise, people really notice it and they switch off.
And then you also have to know how to creatively talk to AI. Instead of just asking it a blunt question, ask it in a way that makes it actually have to think about the answer and be more creative with it.
Yeah. If I ask ChatGPT if I'm a good book writer, it will tell me yes. And then it'll be like, so tell me the reason. Why am I good? But you have to ask it more because it then has to justify itself. But it tends to answer to please you. So I can get it. And it's once you've given it more information and once you've given it the background, and once you get a much better answer than just yes, you're good at something because it needs the background.
Learning how to prompt correctly is a thing all by itself.
Yeah.
That takes some time to learn. I use AI to help me with the structure of my business and the podcast, because I could not do it in the limited time. I'm one human being.
Yeah.
I could not do what I do in the limited time without it. It's quite helpful. But like you said, you always have to apply caution. It's interesting. Almost every podcast, for some reason, it seems to segue into an AI conversation.
Sorry. I think we're all experienced this. We're not sure what to do feeling. It's affecting everything we do. And we don't want to, the same as you said about, we don't want to just go here or give up, but we also don't want to not embrace some of it because we might get left behind. And I think that example, look, the Beatles were using technology, so they were recording on 4-track or 8-track tape, 4-track tape probably. In a way, people said that's not live, they're recording, and then they're bouncing this track and then they're bouncing that track. But actually it created the best. People will remember the Beatles as legendary, experimenting with recording and things like that. They were only using the new technology that came along. So we have to
Right.
embrace the new technology and use it. You don't have to use it as just mind-numbing, write me a book. If you can use it properly and use it, it can really enhance what you do, but be wary of it as well.
One of the things I love about what I do in my business that has kept me going all these years is the fact that it is changing all the time.
Yeah.
I love to learn, and having something that does that keeps me interested instead of being in a more stagnant field.
In some ways, when COVID happened and we all had to rethink how do we work, it sounds stupid, but in some ways, to a creative, business-minded brain, that was quite exciting, because whilst it's scary, it's also like, okay, how do we reinvent ourselves? So we learned at that point we couldn't always write in rooms together. We could write online. And actually, my mentorship program came from the fact that we had to write online, and then suddenly I've got 100 people in my group because they all wanted to write online, and they're all spread around the world. And okay, we've created this new way of working, which wouldn't have happened if we hadn't have had COVID happen and stop us all from going out. But there was a point where I was having to think, how do we save this? Because the business could go down. It was hard work, but exciting at the same time. When you look back at it, I had to use my creativity to get out of the situation, as many other businesses did. Many pubs or restaurants in England built outside areas. And it's interesting, many years on, those are the ones that have survived because they've continued to be able to use the outside areas as well as the inside.
Yeah, definitely open up the doors for collaboration.
Yeah.
And there was also a huge influx of books being published
Yeah.
during and after that time, because people actually had the extra time
To do it.
in their, instead of spending that time commuting and doing all these things, they could actually have hours in the day to where they could sit and work on things.
Yeah.
It's really very interesting. It really changed the whole way that we work.
Yeah, an example of that was I started to write in COVID because I had the time. Actually, I didn't finish because by the time we started to go back to work, and I then had to run a business again. But actually the first part, the life story part of the book that I did, which is a songwriter's guide in the end, the life story part was written during the COVID months where we were at home and I had time to do it.
It's really cool. Took up painting. I hadn't done any type of artistic endeavors for a long time, like decades, because I worked so much. But I took up painting, and it gave me the space to be able to do that. And there's so much information online and in books. I had a wonderful time.
Yeah,
I'm a very solo person, as I like to be by myself. So it was a great time.
There you go. It was positive for some people, and not in every way, but I think it did make us rethink life, rethink how we're living, rethink certain things. I think we needed a bit of a reset.
And also understanding the fragility of life and being more like, what do I enjoy going forward?
Yeah.
What do I want to do? A lot of businesses were built out of that. People became entrepreneurs as opposed to working for somebody else.
Yeah.
They built their own businesses. It's really fascinating. It's interesting you brought that up.
Yeah.
I haven't given it a thought in a while. But it does change things.
Yeah.
What do you tell me about your business? Like, what are the pieces of your business and what do you do? Because I absolutely loved learning about you. I honestly did. You do so much.
Well, yeah, there is different pieces. So I guess it comes from the songwriting. That's the core, the songwriters and the songs. And then around that, we're a publisher. So when we have songs, we need to be able to sell the songs. So that's where the publishing came. And also not just sell the songs, collect the income from the songs around the world. We then also have to produce the songs, make the recordings. So it's songwriters, publishers, producers. I became an A&R because as a publisher, you're listening to other people's music, you're trying to make that better. And as people are sending it to me, I'm giving them feedback. And I did this strengths test on StrengthsFinder 10 years ago, and I suddenly realized that the biggest thing I am is I develop other people. So, and that's when I get my biggest thrill, is seeing someone else who I've developed succeed. So A&R and publishing is part of that, but also mentorship and coaching is a further part of that. So we mentor and we coach writing. And one of the things I teach is how to monetize your income, because there's so many people come in and say, I want to be a famous songwriter. I want to earn income money out of it. But they have no idea. And they're writing songs for Adele. And the clue is in the name that Adele's a singer-songwriter. So you can't really write songs for someone who's a singer-songwriter because they've already written their own. So I'm trying to tell them, look for where the markets are, where they need your songs. It's business practice. It's not songwriting. Where's the supply? Where's the demand? So I teach that in the mentorship. I run songwriting camps, which is fantastic because I get to travel around the world in different places. We're in Barbados this year. We've been in Italy, Luxembourg. We put teams together, which is very creative, come out of the songs. And again, we pitch the songs. So there's a whole model working towards writing the songs, developing writers to write songs, pitching songs, monetizing the songs. Even my book is about a songwriter's guide. In a sense, I'm helping them guide with that. I also do football coaching, which I think is very interesting. It came also probably out of COVID, needing something else to do to switch me out of my business. But it really is something that switched me off, but also makes me manage a team. And you can put the two together. You can put football coaching and publishing together because it's about having, or let's say an orchestra. You want a string player, you want a bass player, you want a drummer, you want different parts of the team. So lots of it is about running a team and making a team successful as well, which is, I guess, what I thrive on, what I enjoy. So.
You've mentioned it several times in different parts of your business, how the collaboration is what guides it. I love the idea of the songwriting camps. It has to be so much fun. And the people that go there have to get so much value out of it because it's immersive. Yeah, I really think that's brilliant.
Yeah, it's one of the
situation to be in.
One of the most rewarding to watch people come in on day one, and when they leave on day 5, they've changed. Because again, they've come in. What happens with songwriters? I assume it's the same with book writers, authors, creators. It's like we live in a world where no one really understands us. This is how I feel. And then you go on a songwriting camp and you meet another 20 songwriters, and they all understand me, and I don't have to explain myself. So there's an element of suddenly you feel accepted and suddenly you feel like you're in the team or in the family. So you actually feel safe and you're able to create the best way you can. So, and during the week you make all these connections, and it might be you write 3 songs with 9 different songwriters, but you also had breakfast with 10 others and lunch with another 5. And actually after the camps, I see someone traveling to somewhere else on Facebook, and this person going from Switzerland to Canada, and they met, and the camp was a catalyst of creativity. And actually, you know that when you come home, you feel slightly disconnected because you've disconnected from these people that understand you. But actually, the key is you stay connected by social media and traveling and everything. And it really is a big catalyst for creativity and connection.
Your writers' conference or going away to a writers' group type situation, it's the same thing. It's invaluable, really, because of those connections. And again, it fuels you even more with your creativity because you see how other people are solving problems and talking about things. And it just opens up your mind so much.
And I think you realize you're not alone. There's that thing, they're the same as me.
Right.
Suddenly, oh, okay, I'm okay then. I'm actually not too abnormal. I think that I describe myself sometimes now as I must have been disillusional. And I think songwriters are disillusional. I'm talking about this in a positive. I think we need to be disillusional. That's why my book's called Keeping the Dream Alive. We need to keep dreaming because we won't reach the big stars or the success without dreaming and thinking out of the box and believing we can get there. And actually, I think that's the difference between creative people maybe and people that do a normal job is we have this sort of unexplainable belief that we might make it.
I think that is the difference, is that determination and believing that you can is one of the things that powers people that try to make it with their creativity. Also, too, I think a lot of times, back to not feeling alone, is so many of us are neurodivergent.
Yep.
And that's a whole nother level of being misunderstood.
It's totally in my family, and I see it in the songwriters all over the place. And actually, I think that's a superpower.
Me too.
It's a superpower if you can unlock it.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree with you. I have ADHD, like severe ADHD.
Yeah.
But that allows me to multitask. It allows me to see things differently.
Yeah.
It allows me to understand patterns, and be able to fix problems quicker than other people a lot of times
Yeah.
because I see the problems before other people do. But at the same time, there are negatives that you have to learn to deal with and cope with. And
Yeah.
I'm older, so I understand that a lot better than I used to. Now that it's become more of an accepted disability, we have a lot more tools that we can use.
I mentioned Pete and his 16 ideas earlier. He's definitely got ADHD. He just needed someone to help him come and channel the ideas. So, and I grew up with basically autism in my family. I just learned how to help facilitate and give people help with that, in a sense, without knowing it. I didn't know I was doing it. I was just able to see people's giftings and pull them out of themselves, which I think is important because there's some really great genius people out there who can change the world if we find what superpowers are.
Before I started my own business, I ran other people's businesses. One of the things that I was really good at was building teams because I could see the pros and cons of their personality and their work ethic and guide them into where they would be best placed.
What I do on the songwriting camps is exactly put the right teams in the right rooms and don't get it right all the time. But when you do, it can be about the different skill sets and strengths as a musician, but it can also be about the psychology of the mind of each person as well. So I try and do on the songwriting camps, I do something inspiring in the morning, usually make myself vulnerable and tell a story or something. And that usually opens up everyone's mind a bit. And then they go into the rooms and they're a lot more open to not, because the thing is you go into the room together and everyone's a little bit, first of all, they're a little bit trying to find their space. And sometimes the first day is a little bit competitive. And then the second day they realise they're safe, so they stop being competitive. But you put the teams together and it works. So rewarding to come out of that and think, okay, look what's come out of that team. I didn't make the team, but I put the team together and it worked, in a sense.
Well, you have to be able to put your ego aside a little bit in that kind of environment and really foster more of your empathetic side to be able to see where other people are coming from and figure out that structure like that. I would love to work in that kind of dynamic. It would be a lot of fun. Greig, I really appreciate it. This has been a very interesting talk. We ended up kind of going all over the place, but
ADHD and autism probably. But that's good. That's good. People don't want to hear the same thing all the time, do they?
The book that you're working on.
So the first book is about dreams and songwriting and keeping the dream alive. The second book is about Eurovision. So I don't know if much about Eurovision. Eurovision's a sort of musical songwriting competition that started in, I think it had its 70th anniversary. So it started in 1956. The idea of Eurovision was that it would unite Europe through song after World War II. And it's basically a song competition that in those days 16 countries were in, but now it's more like 40. And the book is about, we've had 18 entries over 11 years. So the book is about one chapter about each entry that we got, how we got there, the background of the song, and the sort of my journey all the way through, how I was knocking on the door of the BBC and they were ignoring me for 10 years. And then suddenly they decided to employ me as their music consultant. So it's a big change around. And actually, really, my initial thought was write a book about winning Eurovision. I haven't won yet, but I'm going to finish the book. And then once I've won, I'm going to add some additional chapters because I think actually the story is really important along the way. It's similar again. It's about songwriting. It's about Eurovision. It's about the backstories, but it's also about how I overcame lots of rejection and turn downs and loss. We lost. So if I were to get 18 entries, which is 18 wins, I probably had to lose 100 times. So it's getting up and starting again, getting up and starting again.
There's a lot of value in that as a reader, reading about that, because it would make you feel that you're not alone in that, there's still hope that you could keep moving forward.
Yeah.
So they could learn from some of your mistakes that were made.
The first book is very similar in the sense, the idea is I made a lot of mistakes. And if I can tell you the funny stories about the mistakes I made, at the time I went to Taiwan thinking I was earning $5,000 and it turned out to be 5,000 Taiwanese dollars, then you kind of learn from my mistakes because you don't do that yourself. Although that did turn into a positive story once I got there. So, but yeah, it's kind of guides. And I think by telling stories, that's the best way to learn in life is you read other people's story. I love biographies. autobiographies in the sense where they've written them themselves, and you can see, it's particularly sports people, how have they achieved it? And you learn a lot of it was they just didn't give up. It's the same message. They didn't give up.
Could you share where people can find out more about you and about what you're doing? And
Yeah, so the first book is on Amazon, very simple, Keeping the Dream Alive by Greig Watts with an I in my name. And my website, www.dwbmusicgroup.com, or Facebook or social media. You can look me up, Greig Watts, on Facebook or Instagram, easily findable because again, I've got that I in my name. And you can find all sorts about, my parents put an I in my name, so I wasn't called Gregory, but there's a couple of stories in the book about how funny that was and how much problem it caused me in my early days. But actually now it's been the best thing because you can find me on the internet much easier. So if you search Greig Watts on the internet, songwriter or producer or something like that, then come up.
I'll put all of Greig's information in the show notes. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a really interesting conversation. Like I said, a little bit out of the lane, I thought, but it turned out it's very much in the lane. The writers struggle with their businesses just as much as the songwriters do, and for very much the same reason, which is interesting.
Thank you for having me.
To learn more about the podcast and to sign up to be the first to learn when new episodes are up, visit thewritingbiz.com. Until next time, take what you've learned and put it to work in your own writing biz or your songwriting biz, depending on where you're coming from. Thank you, Greig.
Thank you. You've been great. I look forward to speaking again sometime.
Yes, I hope so.